So this show is carbon positive. We've partnered with Carbon Positive to allow us to get to that point. Listen to the show to find out how you also can become carbon positive. I have one GCSE, I'm dyslexic, I'm dyspraxic, and I have mild ADHD, which makes things rather exciting when trying to run a business. However, I have built multi-million-pound businesses with no investment, and now I invest in others. And guess what? I love every minute. I'm Oliver Bruce, this is my podcast, Success is in the Mind, and welcome to The Journey. A podcast where we speak to founders and entrepreneurs from the businesses that you've always wanted to know more about. We delve into the formative years of their business lives and ask those with the inside track on startup and scale-up life the questions I wish I knew the answers to when I started out. As always, the more you share and subscribe to this podcast, the more people that'll be able to learn, enjoy, and avoid the mistakes that so many make. So, when should you raise VC funding? Should founders give all employees equity, and what do acronyms banded around in boardrooms like SEIS, EIS, TAM and VAT actually mean to founders like you? We'll shed light on just how many founders are neurologically diverse, and we'll show you how to get through tough times when things inevitably get hard. I'm Oliver Bruce, and welcome to Success is in the Mind, The Journey.
We shouldn't be thinking of food in calories. It's based on bad science that's 130, 140 years old. And to reduce how good a food is to just a bunch of numbers is just not good enough. Always follow up your interesting emails and do so within 48 hours. Dopamine isn't just the feeling we get when we have the nice food or do pleasurable things. It's what motivates us to acquire food, to come seek a mate, to go and have fun. It's the not having the good food that's the bigger issue than having the junk food.
So James, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. You were born and now you're here. What happened in between?
Quite a bit, 50 years unfortunately, which I can see you're shocked.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, quite a bit. So I grew up in Northamptonshire since I was 4. Then did all the normal things that kids do. Then did nutrition at University of Surrey, nutrition with dietetics. Left university and went straight and worked as a clinical dietitian in the NHS, which is what pretty much everybody did. Quite liked it, knew it wasn't a long-term thing, but also kind of in the back of my mind, I knew it would be invaluable experience. So I carried on doing it. Now, in the last couple of years, I always wanted to be sort of a private dietitian, so I sort of managed to set up my own private practice. So I was, seeing patients in hospital, advising on things like clinical tube feeding, enteral tube feeding for the critically ill, stroke rehab, gastroenterology, quite a range really. Also doing outpatient clinics, like obesity, there's some food intolerances, high cholesterolemia, et cetera, all the usual stuff. So quite a range. And then I started seeing patients privately, but I live in rural Northamptonshire. And so to see a patient was a trek. Occasionally I'd run clinic sessions. They wouldn't get that booked. And then same sort of time, I started working in the bodybuilding fitness world. And we set up in 2000 a website called muscletool.co.uk, which initially was quite successful. Me and my business partner got an income of it for several good years, really, advertising revenue. And then all the same time, I was still doing my consulting. And then we went forward all the way to 2014. And because I used to take any sort of projects that sounded interesting, that's when Julian Hearn got in touch, who is the principal founder of Huel. And he had this great idea for this great product called Huel. What we didn't know was called Huel at that time. And he commissioned me to do a project to come up with what the formula might look like. We worked together for a year, and in June 2015, we launched.
Because interestingly, I mean, obviously starting out in literally nutrition, you never really wanted to go into business as far as I can see. It just automatically seems to have sort of serendipitously happened. Was that something that you set out to do, or was it kind of a coincidence?
Since I was in the NHS, I wanted to be a businessman, whatever that means, right? But I also wanted to do nutrition, but I didn't have a clue, really. My real expertise was in the nutrition side, not as a businessman, but people always sort of suggests that if you want to be successful, then do what you do best and just align yourself with others who know their bit. And I think that's the kind of philosophy that has gone forward. Yeah. But I didn't know, like you say, Ollie, I didn't really know it was going to happen. I thought it was another project. Quite a good one, granted, but I literally thought it was going to be that. Didn't know I was going to be co-founder of the business.
And that is an amazing story, in as much as being co-founder of Huel now seems like you made an amazing bet, and obviously you knew exactly how it was going to pay off. But when Julian called you up and went, look, mate, I need a bit of help in terms of the formulation for the powder, essentially, were you just hoping that it was going to be a paycheck for a couple of months and then you move on? What was the kind of going through your head at that time?
Yes, well, I never come across this guy before, and I do get project emails quite regularly. And one thing I've always done, that I think is good advice, is always follow up your interesting emails and do so within 48 hours. And I'd always stuck to that philosophy. So I got this email from this bloke called Julian, had this idea, replied quickly. He wanted a quote. Couple of emails, came up with a quote. I massively underquoted him. It took me a lot longer than I thought it was. I think I thought it would take me, 20 hours or something, and it probably took me 40 hours of work.
So in terms of then, you obviously underbilled it but over-delivered. How did you have that conversation with Julian in terms of going, right, I've quoted you for 20, I've done 40, actually now I want to come into the business. How did that actually work?
It was a year before we actually had the conversation. I did several other projects for him during the year, small ones that he paid me a small amount for. And he said, look, this is going somewhere. I need someone to come in on this business, do the obvious choice. Do you want to? Yes, please.
In terms of the growth, it is astronomical. You're 140 odd million in terms of revenue. You've just done another investment round to value you over $500 million. That's a hell of a punt for little more than a decade. In fact, you haven't even hit the decade point yet.
No, we're 7.5 years old since that June 15. There was 2 of us working for the company then. Now there's 240. We've got a board with some pretty good non-executive directors. For instance, Stephen Bartlett is on our board as an investor, and we advertise his Diary as CEO podcast, which has worked out really well for us. We've got some really good people work within the business. We don't just want people to do a job. We want people to enjoy their job. We want people to be happy. I think that's key, and people are behind our mission as well.
And in terms of that mission, I suppose, that's come fundamentally from just how healthy and how good the food is, or I suppose the meal supplements are for people, right? In terms of there's an element around it that you've kind of gone actually out with the standard, healthy protein bars, for instance, and let's make your life as easy as possible from a RTD or a meal prep point of view and just be that convenience thing. Is that something that was always the objective from day one, or was it something that just happened over time?
Huel products are what we call complete food. Some people refer to us as meal replacements. I don't think that's a perfect term, but complete food is the category. And we do powders. We've got the hot and savoury product, which is some of the grain-based or pasta-based that you mix with hot water in a 5-minute stir, and 5 minutes later you consume. We've got bars. We've got the RTD. Some of them you can see behind me. And we've got a couple of other products in our range as well. Everything we have is what we call nutritionally complete. So our target is every adult that's potentially who could buy our products. Because it's, we don't make products for the sports industry. Can your products benefit people who are active and even at elite level in sports? Of course they can. But the goal is for busy people, for convenient food.
I use Huel regularly, and it does fill me up. And I know that you were banned recently, in fact this year, 2023, by the Advertising Standards Agency for saying that Huel essentially can save people money and make your day slightly easier. Now, just talk to me about what your thoughts are around the ASA and whether that was right or wrong.
I think we could have worded it better. I think, to be honest, the ASA had a fair point, right? Look, we have loads of adverts go out, they get checked, but because this one wasn't a strict nutritional health claim, it didn't get checked through the correct processes. If we'd have used the word lunch instead of day, for example, in the advert, would have been okay, I think. Obviously, I can't say that for sure, but it would have been a different outcome, because what we implied, what the advert implied, we didn't intend it to imply this, was that it would save people money entirely. Yeah. So we could have done better with the wording there, to be honest.
This podcast is sponsored by Huel, and I want to talk to you about the Huel Black Edition, which is a high-protein meal with everything your body needs in a complete shake. All you need to do is add 2 scoops to water, and you've got yourself 26 essential vitamins and minerals and 40 grams of protein in one 400-calorie serving. I'm sure many of you can relate to not being able to get a nutritious breakfast or lunch in your working week, and I've found that Huel is the answer. It automates what you do for those meals, so in the morning I don't have to think about it. I add water, 2 scoops, shake and go. It eliminates the possibility of making those questionable breakfast decisions, and I know I've got the protein, I've got the calories, and I've got the vitamins. During the working day, just automate it. Make it easy for yourself. There's all sorts of good stuff in Huel: vitamin D, C, E, iron, fibre, protein. It saves me time and it saves you that decision-making process that sometimes leads to you choosing the more unhealthy option. So, if you want to try it, go to huel.com/success. That's HUEL.com/success, and you'll get a free t-shirt and a shaker with your first order. Back to the episode. James, I'm interested in the book that you're about to release called Thought for Food. Just talk to me about that one.
The book is, roughly speaking, in 3 parts, 12 chapters. The first part is why humans eat what we eat. And I subsequently identified a total of 25 reasons.
Wow.
And I'm focusing in the book on 2 of them. One is the biology, like dopamine, the neurotransmitter dopamine, you may have heard of. It's our drive, it's our cravings, how that works. And also some others like serotonin, makes you feel happy. You see that picture behind?
I do,
chemical. That's the chemical symbol for happiness, chemical symbol for serotonin.
Okay.
And also the cultural reasons why we eat what we eat. How does culture influence? Because people don't realise this. And certainly in researching in the last 2 or 3 years, certainly made me view the food system differently. Now, that's part 1. Part 2 are what I call the 5 pillars of the strategy, which are eating for our own physical health, eating for our mental health, sustainable nutrition, ethical eating, and then eating as a community. Why meal times are important, why eating with friends and family and how that can affect our biologies. The third part is, okay, that's all very interesting, but what does that mean? What can we do? So I've looked at the fact that there's 8 billion people on this planet. I thought, well, let's define my strategy. Let's look at some terms and how we're going to get around this. So I talk about GMOs, obviously talk about complete food like Huel with a focus, being transparent, saying, talk about plant-based meats and the cellular ag meats and proteins that are coming out and other innovations that are going to help humans address the crises we could be facing. And then the last chapter has got some nuances and practical ways that people can address this. So the book will be, I'll be announcing on LinkedIn at some point in a few months the date of release.
So in terms then of looking at the dopamine, for instance, and things that actually make people happy when eating, when I'm hungover, I go and eat a Domino's. I feel a bit lethargic, but actually I feel happy because I've eaten something. What goes through people's minds as to how and why food makes someone feel so good?
We're going philosophical, are we, Holly?
Why not?
Caveat, I'm a nutritionist, I'm not a neuroscientist, okay. But dopamine isn't just the feeling we get when we have the nice food or do pleasurable things or whatever. It's what motivates us to acquire food, to come seek a mate, to go and have fun. Then there's a bunch of other neurotransmitters that seem to be involved in the happy feelings that we get when we do the things. So I mentioned serotonin already. Well, serotonin, about 90 to 95% of serotonin is recently been revealed, is not released in the brain. It's released from the enteric nervous system. Now that's the nervous system of the gut. So there's almost certainly a link there with the gut microbiome, which are all the good bacteria and other microbes like archaea that live in our digestive system. And these, through ways that we really don't fully understand yet, are sending messages to our brains, and our brains are sending messages back to them and the enteric nervous system that's involved not just in digestion, but also in healthy immune system, inflammation, and probably cognition as well, so how we feel. Other neurotransmitters and hormones are involved as well. So a lot of people may have heard of endorphin. Well, certain foods And exercise can release endorphin. That's supposed to make you feel good. And another one is oxytocin, which is the one that was traditionally been associated with mother and baby, but it's been associated with being around other people. So this is what I mentioned, eating together. People, it seems that oxytocin is released when people are eating around a table with friends, and even just being in the company of others, not just the eating thing. And there are very likely numerous other neurotransmitters as well. I mean, for instance, GABA is one that's released when people get drunk, and it makes you feel relaxed. So some people use it, people like a one drink or two, people got it under control, that maybe struggle in social situations, maybe have a drink because it will release GABA and it just helps social cohesion, helps calm them, and that's a good feeling. So although not directly happiness, it's very complicated. But ultimately, what I've told you there is just the neuroscience and just the chemicals that are associated with this. A lot of it is just it's subjective perception. It's you know when you're feeling happy or when you're having fun, when you're fulfilled, and what is happiness anyway.
I just wanted to say, I hope you're enjoying the episode so far, and if you are, we'd love it if you could rate it, subscribe to it, and share it with friends and colleagues. As you know, the more reach that we get, the bigger the guests become, and the more knowledge sharing that we can do. To find out more, head over to successpodcast.co.uk. As a startup or SME, it can be hard to keep your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on 100% of the time. A past guest of the show and now series sponsor Habu offers solutions to businesses and organisations of varying sizes the ability to pick and pack your product from their D2C hubs across Europe. You can now stop asking your partner to help box up a recent order, and your living room will no longer be filled with boxes from floor to ceiling. Instead, the team at Habu will do all of this for you, and you don't need to worry about size. Habu helps startups with orders of less than 500 parcels a week all the way through to larger organisations with more complexities. So speak to the team at habu.com and quote SuccessPod and see how they can help you. Back to the episode. In terms of process and how you run your life, because looking at the brand Huel, for instance, is all about simplifying and making life a bit easier. Do you live that yourself in terms of, do you have a schedule? Do you have a way of living? Do you, live A to B very structured? Or are you someone that actually is a bit more of a free spirit?
That's a good question. I've never been asked that before. I'm certainly not free spirit. I don't have a very structured plan to every day. But within a day, I do plan all day. And I think, can I do this by such a time? So I don't know if you're aware of James Clear's Atomic Habits book, the bestseller. No. It's a self-help book, but one of the good ones, because some of them can be very questionable. And it's an excellent book. It's one of the best. It's the best self-help book I've read, and probably one of the top 10 books I've ever read. He calls them Atomic Habits. Some of what he talks about in there, I was already kind of doing. I called them micro goals. So I'd set myself, I'd wake up in the morning and think, right, I've maybe got an hour before I need to start work because I've got up early. I've got some reading to do. Let's read and try and get to this page by that time. And I do the same with, okay, we're at the beginning of the week. I want to have 7 workouts of some description this week. What days can I possibly do them? They might shift, and then I'd have to, if something came up, then I'd do one another day. So be little things like that. And even within a workout, I might say, okay, let's say I was doing a circuit, and it was, my previous best was 32 minutes. Can I beat it by 10 seconds or things like that? So I do a lot of that myself, but I'm not structured every day. Maybe it's an excuse, but it's not worked out for me when I've tried to do it. But I do get up some mornings really early and I go, I've got a sauna at home, have sauna and have cold shower. And I do the cold shower thing every day.
Do you?
And read. But they're my perfect mornings, which are probably once or twice a week rather than every morning.
I think mine perfect mornings are once or twice a year, maybe, mate. But in terms of those micro goals, I suppose, or the atomic habits, as you say, thinking about it, how do you speak about it? Yes, when I'm doing a 5K run or a 10K run, I'll try and do it slightly quicker. Do I set out to do that? Probably not. Is that what you're getting at in terms of, you'll try and beat a goal or you'll try and better yourself, but maybe only when you're in the moment?
Yeah, before the moment as well. I have a problem. I can get distracted quite easily with a lot of things. I do procrastinate because everybody does it, but I'm not too bad at that. I don't think I'm a massive procrastinator, but my brain runs off with itself. So I can be reading, I'll be one into a book, and I've gone from the page. And obviously well-written books with excellent people with good narrative focus my mind a lot more. And I certainly don't get away on the rare occasions I read fiction and novels. I generally, my mind doesn't wander. But yeah, and I find that frustrating. I need to try and find ways of getting over that. But yeah, I'd call myself structured in the short term, but not so structured in the longer term.
In terms, then, I suppose, of how people, from a nutritional point of view, might be able to better their way of life, be it mentally, physically, or from a gut point of view, what advice, what things do you think people should be putting in place to do that? Because looking at, let's say, Kefka, for instance, I don't know how you pronounce it, but the biotiful gut health side of things, that is a massive market right now that actually, for me, having had some, makes me feel a lot more healthy. And I don't know necessarily if there's anything that you can put in place just to sort of allow people to go on that journey of becoming a better version of themselves.
When you say you had that and it made you feel healthy, what do you mean by feel healthy?
Less bloated after a meal.
Okay, so that's one aspect, because some people could be perceived energy levels. Sometimes it's a bloat thing. Just do they feel tired and sleepy? There's different types of tiredness, isn't there? Some people feel sleepy, other people just feel drained. So there's a lot in there. What advice would I give? Well, if people are busy, Huel is obviously great, and I've got to start with recommending that. But that's sure, I have my biases and I'm going to recommend it, but I also, that's part of the reason we've created it as a business. I do think it's good to prepare food and try and prepare food with family and friends, and be involved as well. If you're not a cook, that's okay, but try and be involved in the process. It's a good time for sharing experiences, talking about the day. If people have got families and kids, have a meal time and share experiences. Now you might think, well, what's that got to do with directly nutrition and feeling good? Well, a lot, because you're communicating with your family, and that's going to make you feel good, and that's going to have knock-on effects to your health. We do have too much meat, and now I'm not a vegan. I'm not wholly convinced by the whole vegan way of life. If not done properly, has to be done very carefully, and in today it can be done, and we've got products that's going to accommodate that. But certainly we should be including a wide range of plants in our diets. Now that can be pulses and beans and stuff like that, as well as a range of whole grain starchy carbs, and loads of other vegetables and fruit. And sure, people have too much junk food, and that is the problem. It's they're not having the good food that's the bigger issue than having the junk food. I would obviously try and avoid the junk food, but if you are having it, it's so important that the bulk of your nutrition comes from good, wholesome meals. And you might say, well, what's that? Well, that's quite a range. Where we're used to eating lots of different foods, and people say, well, I don't like vegetables. Well, have you really tried them, or have you tried cooking them in different ways? Of course, it might be a psychological thing that some people have got an aversion to them. That's a different thing that needs addressing through psychological experts, not just food choice. But we're too spoiled in this world, and the wrong foods are too readily available, and we can make better food choices.
This podcast is sponsored by Huel, and I want to talk to you about the Huel Black Edition, which is a high-protein meal with everything your body needs in a complete shake. All you need to do is add 2 scoops to water, and you've got yourself 26 essential vitamins and minerals and 40 grams of protein in one 400-calorie serving. If you want to try it, go to huel.com/success. That's HUEL.com/success, and you'll get a free t-shirt and a shaker with your first order. Back to the episode. In terms then of let's going back to business somewhat, but when looking through your Twitter, there's photos of you inspirationally speaking to the team at Huel, standing in the boardroom talking to the guys. You're motivating them to do a job. You're motivating them to build the business to become bigger and better for individuals in it and outside of it. Have you ever sort of woken up in the morning and struggled to motivate yourself irrespective of anybody else?
Yeah, but if it happens, it's short term. I'm very lucky that I generally don't have a trouble to be motivated. I was at a wedding yesterday, and I don't drink much, but I did drink a bit yesterday. So this morning was one of those days. But it is an exception. And we get them. Sometimes I'm tired, and if I'm writing, and I really, writing the book, one of the reasons I've done it is I really enjoy writing. I found a thing that I get in the flow state. But some days I have off days, and I can start writing in 15, 20 minutes. If I'm writing a bit, but it's not really working, it's just not the day for it. Now, is that a motivation thing, or is that just me accepting? Because that might be a day I'm going to read instead, so I can acquire, don't want to do otherwise. Or it might be, I often have non-urgent, less taxing jobs to do, maybe related to Huel or maybe something else. Or is it a day that I do then? In recent years, a poor motivation has never lasted beyond one day, and that's a stretch.
And in terms then of how you push the boundaries of Huel and innovate and develop new product, fundamentally, which I suppose is where your core role at Huel lies, how do you ideate? How do you come up? And, recently, and Huel came across my radar probably 2 years ago, just at the back end of the pandemic with a huge amount of social marketing that you guys are pushing my way. You now have gone into those sort of pre-packaged, ready-to-eat meals, as we alluded to earlier. How long does it take to bring something to market? How long does it take to get it right? And how long does it take to get mass market adoption? Because you've been going 7 years, but really in the last 2.5 years, that's when I've started to hear about it.
We've got a really good marketing team, really good social team, really good old team, to be honest, the whole business. And they do a really good job. And we've learned, and this is not part of the business I get involved in, so I'm not always the better person to comment here, but we've learned what type of adverts do better for us and what platforms do better at what time of the day and what demographics, etc. So that's part of our success. As far as the products go, well, Julian I think pretty much all the product ideas have come from him, and it would be something like he'll get this idea and call me up and see what I think about it. And then I'll think how I can make it work from a nutritional perspective. Now, we have a range of products, and if they'd have been made as per my original spreadsheet of them, they probably wouldn't taste very good, or they'd be good, but good nutritionally. So we have to then work together with a brilliant product development team to try and make the products taste brilliant, as well as being nutritionally brilliant. So we don't want to compromise too much, because that's what we set the goals high, but maybe the conversations and development process, I will then look at alternative ingredients and find out actually that's equally as good for nutrition, and it means it's going to be easier, it's going to be better to work in our product. And that's how we come up with them, really. So how long does it take? It varies. So our complete protein, which is our protein product, that's basically protein with all vitamins and minerals and some essential fats and some other bits in it. That was quite quick. That took about, I think, 7 months from the first conversation to being online, which is really good. But it's a powder, and we've already got the infrastructure for that. The RTD took, I think, 2.25 years to get off the ground originally, because the process is so complicated. Some of the other products, the unsavory, I can't remember how long it was. It was certainly the best part of a year, if not longer, because a lot of work goes into it. There's a lot of developments. It's got to be tried. We want to make sure the flavors are right. It's got to be, the process has got to be correct. We've got to, the unsavory, it's got to be a good distribution within the pouch, for instance, so that all the big bits can go to the top and people get the bad experience. So there's so much to think about. And then we've got our technical and quality team as well to make sure that it's going to have the shelf life that it needs. And it's sure, it might be food safe in a year, but if the taste has dropped off because of reasons, not a very good experience. So we've got such high bar we've set ourselves, we've got to live up to it.
And in terms of those RTDs, because even the shape of the bottle and the way that you've branded it is so different to so many other brands in that world, I suppose. Now, you've obviously got a vending machine, which can be found, I think it's Terminal 5. I've seen one when I was flying out of there. Whose idea was that then, to get a vending machine? Because it's genius.
I'm not sure whose idea it was. It might have been yours. It might have been someone in our retail team. But we've had them at Terminal 5. We've got them at Birmingham Bullring, Manchester Airport now as well, and several other airports, if they haven't come already, are coming soon, and some shopping centres as well. And they're great. They look really good. They've got the great messages on them. They've got a massive bottle. on top.
Yeah.
But the bottle shape, it's because it's convenient to hold in your hand. It's not a cumbersome bottle, and it holds 500 mils, which is a meal. This is sure it's a drink, but it's primarily a meal. It's got all the protein, the carbs, essential fats, and vitamins and minerals and fibre that the body needs, and can actually be part of a very healthy diet.
Absolutely, as the advert says on this podcast, because you guys have kindly sponsored it, there is huel.com/success. You get a free t-shirt, shaker, and the black edition. So we've plugged it throughout this. But in terms, I suppose, of where maybe, James, people want to go and buy your book as and when it's out, I'm assuming that might be Amazon. But how can people kind of start to learn a bit more about being healthy, about getting through life in a more sustainable way?
If people want to learn more about nutrition, that's the key of the book, right? I want people to learn about food and nutrition. Now, of course, they don't have to be experts, but people need to know just enough, just be mindful of what they're putting in their bodies, which people aren't these days. And so we have a range of guides and articles on Huel.com. There's loads there to read. So some of them are real sort of top line and basic and fun to read. Some that are a bit more in depth, because we've got a bunch of, just a few hooligans, which we call regular people who have Huel, who are really, really keen and love the detail. So some of the early ones are written by me, and some of them by the other nutritionists at Huel. We've got several qualified and experienced nutritionists at Huel, which is one thing I think that sets us apart from other companies as well. And then there's some easier reads that go out probably in our email marketing campaign. It's still really good, but shorter and easier to read. So that's a good place for people to go. If people want to see what my work's like, I have 7 or 8 articles that are published on LinkedIn. If people want to connect with me there, they can read them. But some of those are sort of bits of the book that are a bit adapted to suit an article and tweaked a bit. For instance, I've covered the processed food one there that people might want to, if they want to get my ideas. And there's some other really good nutritionists there. I really rate Giles Yeo, who was professor of Cambridge. He's got a couple of books out and he's on a lot of podcasts. He's really worth listening to.
What's in it for you, James, coming up then? Like, you've written a book, you've got a really successful business. What next? It's at $500 million now. You're going to try and push it to $1 billion, or are you going to just try and make the business as good as it possibly can be? What's the driving factor?
And we have our targets. We want to, we'll keep pushing those. Obviously, part of the valuation, although we had a really good, valuation, if the economic environment had been better last autumn, we probably would have got a lot more. But relative speaking to what everyone's doing, it's great. We want to keep bringing out new products that are going to support people. For me personally, I strongly value what we do and doing the right thing. Look, Huel has become a name in nutrition and it's become trusted by a lot of people. Now, I mentioned those people that really get into the detail of Huel, and I love those people. Some of them ask some challenging questions and they might be critical, but I love it. But 99.998% of the population, they just want to have something that they know is nutritionally good for them, and we've got them. And so we have to keep to that standard that we set ourselves. So any new products have to meet that responsibility. I'm often, people take a mickey out of me, and I often quote the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And I say it in a jokey with the staff, and they do take the piss a bit, but it's, I think it's important to hold ourselves to that. And that's not just with nutrition. I mean, with the sustainability side isn't my area of expertise, but it is an area of the business I'm heavily involved in. And we are going to be setting ourselves high targets there, like with our products, carbon equivalent emissions, and there's other things, land use. We're all going to be improving what we do there. And I think that's really important as well. So that's the business side of things. The book, hopefully, I'll be involved in trying to publicize that. But hopefully the publisher's going to do quite a lot, but I'm going to do a lot more. I've already started writing the second book, and I've got a sketch outline of 2 more, probably, 3 more, possibly 4 more over the next several years. I don't know, that fourth one might come to fruition, but the others I certainly do. Exploring different areas. One of them's the one I'm writing about on calories, counting calories, and the regulation, for instance, that food chains have to have calories on the menus, covering that area. There's another one that's going to be on addiction to food, another one on belief and culture in respect to food. And there's another one as well. I'm not going to talk about that yet because I don't want the word to get out there until this first book's published.
Absolutely. And in terms of the calories on menus, and that was something that was so divisive when it first got released, and similarly the sugar tax as well. What are your thoughts then on putting calories on menus? Because it does make you think. And actually, I was looking the other day at something and I thought the thing that would be the most unhealthy was actually one of the most healthiest. So it's just so confusing.
You've just answered my question, because you've just said healthy. You just used the word calorie and healthy as synonymous with each other, and they're not. Because calories do not equate to health, and healthy is a weird word. I mean, healthful is probably the better term. Mm-hmm. But we shouldn't be thinking of food in calories. Look, we've got a government who try to be libertarian in what they do in many respects, without getting too political.
Yeah,
and they think, well, we're giving people choice, so they can make their choice then. And if they eat too much, then then it's their fault. Just wrong. Mm-hmm. Calories, as I'm going to outline hopefully in a couple of years when the second book is published, as I'm going to outline, it's so much more than that. It's based on bad science that's 130, 140 years old. It's so much more complicated. There are other factors involved: the microbiome, the drive to eat, what we're surrounded with, exercise, and to reduce how good a food is to just a bunch of numbers is just not good enough. Now, it's not to say there are certain people that use calorie counting as something to hold themselves to account. I don't think it's the best strategy, but some people swear by it, and I would not want to change them from doing that. I don't want to become ideological myself and say such a thing, but all I will say is it's so much more complicated than calories.
As a startup or SME, it can be hard to keep your finger on the pulse of everything that's going on 100% of the time. A past guest of the show and now series sponsor Habu offers solutions to businesses and organisations of varying sizes the ability to pick and pack your product from their D2C hubs across Europe. You can now stop asking your partner to help box up a recent order, and your living room will no longer be filled with boxes from floor to ceiling. Instead, the team at Habu will do all of this for you, and you don't need to worry about size. Habu helps startups with orders of less than 500 parcels a week all the way through to larger organisations with more complexities. So speak to the team at habu.com and quote SuccessPod and see how they can help you. Back to the episode. So when someone says to your PT, for instance, right, we need to have a caloric deficit this week, for instance, that could be perceived as a negative, I suppose.
And what is a calorie deficit for that person that week, that day? It's just a bunch of figures on paper. It doesn't work like that. Sorry, it's not as simple as that.
I can see the passion.
We haven't got 2.5 million years of evolution just to be brought down to a bunch of calories.
So if I, what about mushroom? Because that's a massive market, a massive opening market now in terms of, how mushrooms are being used in certain ways, lion's mane and such like, to be able to give people focus or energy and all that kind of stuff. And, I've started taking nootropics, for instance, and actually whether it's placebo or not, I don't know, do feel ever so slightly more focused, and that has lion's mane in. Now, I don't know what your thoughts are on that side of the world.
Nootropics is an interesting area, right? Caffeine is a nootropic, helps focus and cognition. There's a lot of other components as well, like taurine and glucuronolactone. They've all got nootropic effects. You're probably referring more to the adaptogen side, which a large bunch of them are in mushrooms, and there is limited evidence that adaptogens can be useful for cognition. So I don't know how that equates actually to how in actually eating so many mushrooms a day or what type of mushrooms come from where. But I do know things like lion's mane and reishi or whatever the word is. They could be linked to something interesting. I think there could be something in that. I think a lot more research needs to be done. And it's also not an area that I'm amazingly well versed.
No, makes sense. I'm fascinated by all of this, how you can be more focused and how you can have more energy when actually you're eating fundamentally less, because I don't eat much and actually I've got more energy than I ever have had before, and I just don't know what that's down to.
Dude, when did you start having the mushrooms?
The magic mushrooms, or just the mushrooms?
The magic mushrooms. Yeah.
Literally about 2 months ago, and I've been, honestly, without wanting to publicise it too much, been having Huel for a lot longer. But actually, those are my two main things, and I really don't eat lunch, and I don't have breakfast.
Which your products do you have?
The Black Edition, and then the ready-to-drink chocolate.
Okay, which was your favourite flavour? Black Edition?
No, well, Black Edition cookies and cream.
Okay, do you have chocolate flavour or vanilla flavour? Or?
I do have chocolate flavour, but I've got cookies and cream black, chocolate black as well. Cinnamon, it's Christmassy, I'll be honest, but it wasn't every day of the year.
Cinnamon's my go-to.
Is it? Okay,
yeah,
no.
At the moment.
And then, the RTDs are vanilla or chocolate.
Yeah, that's great. So, I mean, that would help give you energy. Do you ever try intermittent fasting, or do you have breakfast?
No, I don't. I just do literally Huel's, couple of tablets, nootropics wise, and then I'll do a dinner in the evening, and that is it. That is it.
Do you have caffeine?
Lots of caffeine. 8 coffees a day. Run 5-6K in the morning.
See, that will certainly make you feel energised. I've recently cut down my caffeine a lot because I should have done better. This is one of the times I give myself a telling off. I was having no coffee after 12 o'clock because, I need to sleep. But I was having 4, maybe 5 coffees before that. Then, of course, the quarter life of caffeine, which is, roughly speaking, the amount that's left, we've got a quarter of the amount that's left in your blood, is about 12 hours. So if there's 100 milligrams of caffeine, approximately in a mug of coffee, and I was having 4 or 5 before lunch, well, by bedtime, I've still got 100 milligrams in my system. So it was just like having a cup of coffee before I went to bed. Why I didn't spot that before? Now, I'd really fall asleep okay, and 9 nights out of 10, I sleep pretty well. So I didn't think it was a problem. Then I started looking at the biology of sleep a lot more. And this sort of deep sleep, you've got the deep sleep and the REM sleep. The REM sleep is where you dream.
Yeah.
And again, caveat here, not an expert. But the deep sleep is what caffeine affects. And we don't get into the deep sleep enough, and maybe you're waking up and you don't realize you've woken up, so you're not processing things correctly. Now, it might be that you feel okay the next day, probably because you've just had a load of caffeine to pick you up, and you're picking yourself up from below where you should be, just to baseline. So I'm down to about 1, maybe 2 most, and I'm going to be cutting that down. I'm not going cold turkey because that's the wrong thing to do. I'm going to cut that down. Not that I don't feel great on caffeine, and not that caffeine is bad for you. I've had some real good benefits from caffeine, but because sleep is more important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I get that entirely. I just haven't managed to get to that point just yet. And tea, frankly, just doesn't cut it for me anyway. I'm assuming you're a tea drinker.
Well, I've still got about 40 milligrams in a normal cup of tea. So there's still a significant amount, although a lot less. So that's being cut as well. And I'm going on the decaf tea, which is about 4 or 5 milligrams. So that's hardly worth talking about, right? So.
Should write a book about this one, James. But mate, thank you so much for coming on. I've loved every minute. I've learned loads of stuff that I didn't expect to learn. I hope the listeners have as well. Just remind us where we can go and buy Huel.
Huel.com. Nice and easy. All the products are there and all the information is there, including the guides and articles I mentioned.
And here's a little message from our carbon offset partners, Carbon Positive. So, hey, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us. We obviously wanted to introduce you because you guys are happily supporting us from a carbon positive point of view, trying to get the podcast Carbon Positive over the next 12 months. But I wanted you to tell the listeners why you chose this podcast and, what's so special about Carbon Positive from a non-for-profit point of view.
So we decided to choose Success in the Mind podcast for a couple of reasons. It's not necessarily our absolute forte because of our position being a not-for-profit. But it definitely aligns with some of the aspects that we do and that we want to support podcasts with in particular. We want to make it easy for podcasts to be able to become carbon positive and to be able to make their podcast environmentally friendly and show their listeners that they have a social conscience. We understand that it's difficult for people and it takes a lot of time sometimes, and we wanted to give podcasts the tools to be able to calculate and offset their carbon footprint throughout their whole podcast, which goes from everything from production to their listeners across the world, and to be able to offset that footprint and become a carbon positive podcast.
So, I mean, for us, it's something quite close to our heart. From a business point of view, we're very much focusing on becoming carbon neutral. Now, with regards to the podcast, you guys are kindly helping us along the way of becoming carbon positive. So 120% uplift on that, essentially. Just talk to me about how you're going to make our podcast carbon positive over the next 12 months.
We essentially use an algorithm to calculate the carbon footprint of every podcast. So with that algorithm takes into account lots of different factors, basically everything from listener location, listener device choices, global electricity consumption. For example, with the device choices, if someone was to listen to a podcast on a mobile phone, it's 600 times less energy intensive than if they were to listen to it on a laptop or computer, for example. So we'll take all of that information and we'll create a custom plan that will be specifically tailored towards successes in the mind. That will help us in two ways. It'll help us to make sure that we can keep really up-to-date statistics for every single podcast, and it will also give us a good idea to make sure that the algorithm is calculating efficiently.
You know, you're a non-for-profit business. B, I don't think you've necessarily worked with podcasts necessarily like ours before, so it's really exciting to be on that journey with you, helping you guys do it, but similarly sort of seeing what you guys want from us equally.
No, you are absolutely our first major case study, which is super exciting for us because it really gives us some in-depth data that we can use to help every other podcast. 80 to 85% of the podcasts that are produced will be able to offset their carbon footprint for less than the price of a takeaway coffee every month. We see podcasting as quite a young industry, which means that we have a unique opportunity to be able to get in there early and to support podcasts to become carbon positive and make podcasting the world's first carbon positive medium. It's
properly exciting to be on that journey with you. And I know you guys are based out in Switzerland and we're obviously based in the UK, but to be able to come together remotely is very exciting, and to be able to see our podcast become carbon positive over the next 12 months for me is just another reason to get involved in it. So thank you very much for asking us to get involved. In terms of people that are listening to this show and every other show, where can they go to A, find out more about Carbon Positive, and B, what do they need to do to get in touch?
The place to find out more would be to go to our website, www.carbonpositive.com. But then, as we all know, every business comes with unavoidable carbon footprint. We understand that offsetting isn't the absolute answer, but we can make the industry better, first of all, and then what is unavoidable footprint we can try and offset. There'll be a tips and tricks page on the website which will help to reduce, first of all, and then there's a really short little page on there that you can input 2 pieces of data, monthly downloads and average listening time. And then within 2 minutes, a podcast can become carbon positive. I think it's worth saying as well, the footprint of the podcasting industry is 1.7 billion kilograms of carbon per year, just because that doesn't really mean anything to me a year ago, but now it does. It's equivalent to 2 million flights from London to New York every year, or alternatively, a flight every 15 seconds. It's a drop in the ocean as far as the world is concerned, but if we can reduce that and obviously eventually bring that down to zero, or even bring it into the positive section, which is what we're hoping to do, then we hope that should make a difference.
Wow. 15 flights a second, carbon positive. I love it. I'm glad we're involved, and thank you so much for thinking of us, Andrew.
Thank you very much, Oliver, for speaking to me.